So I welcome you all to the 29th edition of New Delhi World Book Fair. We are here with a program to understanding science with lessons from nature, and with us we have Dr. Gita Mathur. I would like to say a few things about Madam. Dr. Gita Mathur is a retired Associate Professor of Botany from Gargi College. She has published 29 technical and botanical articles in international and national journals. She has been awarded the Woman of the Year in 2001 by the American Biographical Institute, North Carolina, USA. She has 36 years of experience in teaching and research. She has received the Distinguished Teacher Award by the University of Delhi in 2009 for excellence in teaching, handed by the former President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Her page has been featured by User Page Expo on her Wiki Educator page, which is her Teacher Educator page. She also has a popular blog on plant life, and she has delivered many valuable webinars in colleges of Delhi University. Today, ma'am is with us for a very interactive and a very fun session, wherein we will be talking about science in our everyday life, in nature, and what all we can learn from it, and to make science an enjoyable thing. Ma'am, could you tell us a little about it?
Good morning, viewers. It is a pleasure to be interacting with you today, and I must congratulate that Look Trust for organizing this virtual World Book Fair in spite of all the limitations. This is a very unique thing happening for the first time, and I congratulate all of you. I've decided on speaking about something very simple. Generally, students, even elderly people, are scared of the word science. They think something beyond understanding. But the very title we have kept is Understanding Science from Lessons from Nature. So everything that is around us is telling us some facts of science. And I being a plant scientist, I am botanist by training, I like to interpret what we see in plants in very simple scientific terms. The range of age group, as you can call it, can be just from a small child to an elderly person. Anybody would be benefited from this kind of knowledge that we are going to discuss today.
Exactly. So, with us right now connected are a lot of students, lots of schools, teachers, parents, librarians, adults, parents, everybody. And since, as you rightly said, science is something which scares people who are not taking up science in their major or their studies. But today we are all going to discover how science is around us in simple things. As long as we don't think of it as giving an exam, writing a paper, how much marks we are going to get it. But science is all around us, and this interactive session with you, ma'am, is going to tell us how science is an enjoyable feat. And so I have some questions from students and from other adults as well, who want to know simple things, which I think during this interactive session we are going to talk about and know and discover how scientific temper is within all of us. And meanwhile, before I start the first question with madam, in case you have any questions, all of you can write in the comment box, and we will take it up in the next session. So ma'am, the first question that I have here with me is, can we learn science from simple things like banana and orange?
Oh yes, certainly. Anything that's around you has some beautiful scientific facts in it. And maybe I would like to start with banana, as you said. Banana everyone eats, but I want you to start with a small hands-on activity. Just imagine that you are holding a banana in your hand and you are just peeling it. Just close your eyes and peel your banana. 1, 2, 3, 4. You will find that every time you peel a banana, it's always in 4 strips that you will be opening it. And it can be a child or an elderly person. Everybody does this. And only if there is some kind of a variation, you have pulled it hard or something, it may give you more peels, but always 4. Why? There is science there. And if you look at a banana, when you are peeling it, you find that there is a thread-like thing which comes out, and you hold it and you throw it. Fine. But what is this? This small thing is the conducting tissue, which in your school you must have read about xylem and phloem, and water being conducted through xylem and food through phloem, and this whole combination we call as vascular bundle. And you only see it in the section in a slide or somewhere under the microscope that is a vascular bundle. But what you are holding here is a full vascular bundle. So this is something which is, you never visualize that what you are looking at is a very beautiful scientific detail. Similarly for orange, you take out a peel, and I am sure everyone has squeezed it into their friend's eyes.
All of us.
Well, that's because it has got tear-shaped or drop-shaped glands in the orange part. And when you hold that and press it, the bulbous part gets pressed and the liquid squeezes up. And this is not harmful at all. It is a very mild kind of a substance, highly aromatic. And this is the detail of this particular peel. On the inner side, which is white side, you find that again there are some fibrous things which you remove and you eat. If you look at those, they are branched. Now just imagine, in banana the same thing is straight, and in this one, in orange, they are branched. Why? Because then you will realize that banana is a monocot plant. Monocotyledons having parallel veins in the leaves. I am sure everyone is aware of that. And on the other hand, orange is a dicotyledon which has reticulate venetia. So in both the cases, they are the same structures. They are both conducting tissue associated with some fibrous tissue.
That is wonderful, because I think till this time they were just a concept in our school book, but now when we look at it from the banana and orange point of view, we realize that they are not just some terms and concepts, they are actually there and they have some kind of an importance which we have not understood till now. So this is wonderful, ma'am, to actually have this revolution like that. Now I'll ask you another question which is very interesting again. I would really like to know, why does milk boil over but not water?
Yeah, that's very, very simple science. The only thing is that, okay, milk boils over, water does not. Your dal boils over,
yes.
But your gravy does not. Now what is the difference? And what is the similarity? The basic reason for milk boiling over is that there is a layer being formed, which we call as malai, and there is steam pushing it up. Fine. So whenever the malai is formed, and then you are heating and steam is pushing up, it will go up. Now this is not formed in case of say gravy if you are heating or water if you are heating. There is no layer formed, so it will not spill over. But as far as milk is concerned, milk is made up of proteins and fats. These fats and proteins are present in the form of very, very small globules, and when you heat, the globules just fuse together. Okay? Just imagine small droplets of oil. When they come together, they are expanding, they come together, they fuse. And when they fuse, they form a layer. And above this layer is the layer of proteins which have coagulated. For example, what I mean by coagulation of proteins is, if you just take an egg and put it in a pan, the white part gets converted to, it turns white, opaque white. Now that is the protein which is getting coagulated, denatured in a way. Okay? So the same thing is happening. The protein is forming a layer on top, and then the fatty layer at the bottom, and then the steam is pushing it up. So the milk will boil over. And your malai will always have a drier layer on the upper side and a creamy layer at the bottom. Now you know what.
So that means whenever I don't do it on purpose, but whenever the milk boils over, So what is wasted is the actual protein, the milk.
Yes, yes. And the fats.
And the fats. So when our parents tell us that we should not boil over, there is a reason behind it.
The nutrient values must.
Correct. Thank you for that, ma'am. There is another question which is again very interesting and actually intriguing. It is intriguing because when the question is like, when we scoop out the spoonfuls of curd, so the water that occupies the space once the curd is liquid, so where does it come from? Because we haven't put it, it seems fine from the top.
Yeah, certainly. When you set the milk and convert it into curds, what you are doing is you are adding an inoculum, and that inoculum word may sound very technical, but you call it simply khatta or jamun or something, and you just put it and mix it with the milk, slightly warmer milk, and then you leave it, say, overnight or a few hours, and the whole thing just solidifies. Sometimes it is so tight that even you shake your container, it doesn't move. Now that is because all the proteins in the milk are gradually coagulated by the activity of the bacteria which produce a very mild lactic acid. They are lactose bacteria, lacto word is for milk. And these bacteria, but this whole curd is not solid bacteria, it is only protein. And the protein is setting so slowly that it is becoming like a sponge. Okay? And the water is in between. So when you cut it, the water will come.
Because it's a sponge.
It is sponge-like thing. So if you cut a portion of that, the water will drain. So in many homes they just stuff the whole thing before serving.
Yes.
And if you just leave it like that, the drier portion becomes very dry and the water gets separated. Exactly the same thing nearly happens when you are making paneer out of milk.
Yes.
You are adding acid. You may be adding vinegar, you may be adding nimbu, the juice of lime. So the acidic condition suddenly makes all the proteins boil, and the whey separates and the proteins get separated. That's the science behind this. See, there is science in everything around you. The only thing is that you have to understand that it is a kind of a basic knowledge which you have to first learn to pick up. If you want to develop scientific temper, as they call it, what you need to do is to develop a scientific way of looking at things. So instead of just letting things pass, if you concentrate on something, to observe some phenomena, then you think about that phenomena, then you read about it. And nowadays, there is so much excess of material everywhere. You can get it on the net, you can get it from books, and of course, I must say, NBT has some very nice children's book for little children who want to get answers to small, simple questions. NBT has wonderful books and they are so nice. I have been, in fact, years back when NBT was in Green Park, since then I have been a regular visitor, and I have always gifted books from here to school children, college students, every age group you are producing, and I must say that I am an admirer of the books produced here because they are very simple, colorful and interesting. So these are the sources which you can get all the information from, and then you, if you are in a slightly older class, then you compare it with what you are studying in school, and then you can going for comparing your notes with your peers, with your friends, and if you make a discussion group of your peers, instead of just chatting half the time meaningless things and saying social media, spending so much time just giving forwards, if you do it to some scientific, interesting things, then you will enjoy as well as learn. Enjoy is a very, very important word. If you have fun, you enjoy, then it is not a lesson. It is fun. And if you have fun and you learn, that's the best combination, I would say.
Yeah, true, very true. I would say two things from it. Firstly, very rightly, as you said, ma'am, NBT publishes books in more than 51 Indian languages and also in English. So we cover books in dialects also, in tribal languages also, in other Indian languages also. We also have books in Braille, and also we have tactile books, silent books, pictorial books, and yes, very true ma'am, it is for all age groups and it's in all genres. So that does cater to it very rightly ma'am. So a lot of things are in our books.
And I also like your vans which go around.
Yes, our mobile exhibition vans are a unique thing, I would say, unique concept, wherein it goes to the length and breadth of the country, it goes to the remotest area. So it is like, हम इसको कहते हैं पुस्तक परिक्रमा, और जो ये पुस्तक परिक्रमा ही है, उनमें सब किताबें रहती हैं और वो पूरे देश का भ्रमण, पूरे देश की परिक्रमा करते हैं और हर राज्य में, हर स्कूल में, हर कॉलेज में, हर जगह जाती हैं और लोग बहुत पसंद करते हैं क्योंकि एक यूनिक लाइब्रेरी सॉर्ट ऑफ थिंग है, बुक शॉप है जो इसके ऊपर है। और सेकेंडली मैम जो आपने कहा, आई थिंक ये बच्चों को स्पेशली और पेरेंट्स को भी जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हम र्यूमर्स या सोशल मीडिया का जो इस्तेमाल फॉर we do it for not a good thing, not for general stuff. We do it just to enjoy, so as that we feel that it is enjoyment, but it's not enjoyment. You're very right. Probably we could find enjoyment from asking simple science questions from each other on the group, and then probably have a contest between each other who has the right answer to it. Probably pick up simple nuances around us, simple concepts around us, and then ask and probably let people guess which is the right answer, and then get the right answer from where it should be. Very true ma'am, I think this is something everybody should do. This is a very nice advice to everyone, and especially parents also, because unless the parents encourage the students to have such a conversation, then only it's going to go forward. Wonderful ma'am. I think we go to the next question now. So this is also so interesting because this has come from parents. They say that from rice we only get rice flour, but from wheat we get maida, atta, suji. ये कैसे possible है?
Yeah, this is something which is very interesting. Definitely, I like the question. We get three things: atta, suji, and maida from wheat. While if you take rice and you make a powder of it, you only get rice flour. Now the reason is that this. Before I go into that, I just want to tell you that we use the word grains for wheat and rice. We don't use the word seeds. I wish it was an interactive face-to-face session. I would have asked you to put up your hand and say whether you call it seed or grain.
I would say I didn't know. Yes, but it's a grain.
The reason is that a grain is a fruit and seed is inside that. See, all flowering plants produce fruits. What we call as naked seeds without the fruit wall is present in cone-bearing plants. The chilgosa which you eat is from a cone, and that cone only has an open surface on which the seed is sitting. So we call it a naked seed. So that is in what we call as gymnosperms or cone-bearing plants. But all flowering plants produce the fruits, and the fruit produced in case of wheat and rice, this is the one which is a very different fruit, and that is why we use the word grain instead of fruit. Okay, coming back to your question. In case of wheat, which is brownish in color, and if you have seen broken wheat, have you eaten broken wheat? Dalia, yeah, certainly. Dalia is nothing but broken wheat, and that you find that inside is white and the outer part is brown, okay, slightly brownish, and we call it even wheatish complexion. We even use this word. Okay. The outermost layer is the fusion of the fruit wall and the seed coat, and this layer is the one which we call as the chanas or choker or something, which is present in the atta which we normally used to get ground earlier. Just below that is one layer which is proteinaceous layer, which is rich in protein, and technically it is called environ layer. It is a layer which is just full of protein, and inside that the center part has a lot of starch. So the atta that we get at home, sometimes you find on the packet it is written chakki fresh atta. Now why should they write chakki fresh atta? Or it is sometimes written fortified atta. You should understand what these terms mean, because this is something coming into your house every day. Just like you check the date of packing, should not be expired as per their specification. Should also see other things written on this packets. Now, the mill atta, as it is called, is the one which is made in the flour mills. And these mills have series of rollers. And these rollers are corrugated rollers, just like you have corrugated sheets. And these sort of go round and round like that. And this size, the space in between, gets reduced as you go further in the rollers. So what you will get is, first of all, you will get the brown outermost layer. After some next distance, you will get the alluron or the protein layer. And then after that, you will get the layer which is the one which is having the starch. So the alluron layer, protein layer is the suji layer, and the starchy layer is the maida layer. If you are grinding everything together, then that is atta. So atta will have all the nutrients, but if you take mill atta, they add different nutrients, and then they say this is fortified. So sometimes they add vitamin A, sometimes they add calcium, and so you may read on that what it is fortified with. Okay. So this is how we get, and of course suji and maida, you will think that suji is rough, maida is fine. So if you grind up suji, you will get maida. No, you will not. Because the reason you don't even have to check it, you know that you can make kheer with suji and give it to infants and to patients and elderly people. But anything made out of maida, you will never get to give to kids. So you won't give, and of course if you make, maybe you have steamed momos and they are not properly steamed, then that means they can even cause you stomach ache. Okay? That is because maida is difficult to digest. And for that, it needs to be super cooked. So there is science in everything. Super cooking simply means that you have to heat it at a very high temperature. And heating at very high temperature can either be done by frying, as you do to your all kinds of fried things that you eat, and in that you use maida. You make bhatura like that. And samosas, yes, certainly samosas. And if you think of cake pastry, they need to be baked. Again, there is a lot of fat put in them. You may say that you are very careful in your controlled fat and all, but you don't mind eating the cake which has half a cup of fat in it. And on roti you don't want to put the ghee, but you don't mind eating the fat that is there. Sorry, that's only just to share that there is science in everything. Simple things telling you so many things about science.
True, but this is so interesting. I think we never knew that. From that simple grain, we get 3 different kinds of things from that grain itself, except that how it is ground and how it is.
And all 3 having different uses.
Different compositions also.
Chemical composition.
This is so interesting. I have another question, ma'am. It says some flowers change color. They open as yellow and later become orange or red. How
there are many such flowers. So the first thing is to go about looking for them. And the commonest one is, which we call as lantana, which is, the botanical name is also lantana. Common name is also lantana because it has not originated in our country. But we call it as wild sage sometimes, and many local names in it. And this is where you find that it's a cluster of flowers. The clusters are called as inflorescences. In the center are buds, which are pink in color. When they open to yellow flowers. By the evening they start turning orangish, and by the next day they are scarlet or magenta in the white variety. There are many varieties of this. All of them having the center freshly opened flower having a yellow ring and that yellowing disappears later. Now, why does this happen in nature? There are lots of studies done on this, and it has been found that the yellow attracts the pollinators. Particularly bees, they get attracted to yellow color. And that is the reason why lots of trees bear yellow flowers. Lots of wild plants bear yellow flowers. I am saying wild because other plants we might have done breeding for particular colors which we like. Okay? So this is very important to know that this yellow color is the one which wants to get pollinated. It may offer nectar. So the pollinator will go to get the nectar there, and it may offer pollen to eat. Basically, the bees collect pollen and they suck the nectar. So they would like to go to those flowers which have these rewards. The older flowers won't have this. So this is some concept of what we call as pollinator partitioning. The plant is so intelligent, it does not want the pollinator to waste their energy looking for this, and gives an indication here it is, come to this flower.
And once it is
depleted, it changes color. Another plant you can see is Mathur, which is a very common climber, particularly in Delhi.
Yes.
Everywhere you find this. The flowers open in the evening, late in the evening.
Yes.
So they open as white. So all the buds in a bunch will be just horizontal like this in the evening, and a little later they will all start opening. Next day morning they start turning pink and coming down.
Yes.
Why? Because red color is like black to bees. And this is very beautiful studies have been done on vision spectrum of insects. We call it insect vision spectrum, human vision spectrum, bird vision spectrum. All those big flowers which you see these days all over Delhi, the seamal flower, as you may know the name, this is a plant which has a very big tree which has red flowers, and these are all pollinated by birds. You will find lots of birds coming to them. You even see crows coming to these trees, and that is because the red flowers are generally pollinated by birds. Hummingbirds, wherever there are hummingbirds, they are not there in Delhi, so don't call any bird as hummingbird. The hummingbirds are generally, wherever they are, they get attracted to the red flowers. Hummingbird feeders are available which are red in color to attract the bird. Okay.
There is so much around us, and we have never bothered to actually understand why it is there.
Nature is the best science to understand.
Very true.
Nature is always telling you everything. The only thing is for you to see it and learn from it.
Very true.
Do you have still more questions?
I have, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So there is one question which is very, this is something I would also like to know. Now, when we were young, so our parents would say, grandparents would say, don't pluck the flowers at night, don't touch the leaves at night, they are sleeping, or sometimes they would relate it to some religious thing. But when they say that they are sleeping, I mean, do they really sleep?
Yes, they do.
They do.
They do. The reason is that basically if you just remember the touch-me-not plant, you touch it and all the leaves, the leaflets as you call them, they just close. Why does this happen? This is a response to touch. A similar response to light makes all those plants which sleep at night roll down their leaves, close their leaflets, and basically these are the plants which are found in drier areas. So it helps in conserving the moisture. The stomata are small holes on leaves from which there is exchange of gases and loss of moisture. Now these stomata close at night because there is no photosynthesis, so there is no sugar synthesized, and the sugars are not synthesized, water will not be drawn into the cells around the opening, and hence the openings collapse. So all this leads to what we call as sleep movements.
Okay, so like when we learn about story, it's almost like closing their eyes and
Yes,
opening their
yes.
eyes. It's something like that. So they do see, right? There are just two more questions. Sure. This question I'm sure has come from some adolescent because it's very interesting. It says that when we keep a rose petal in a book, it changes color, but when we keep feather in a book, it doesn't. So probably they are thinking which one, and which one to ask. To be given to the book.
Yeah, that's an interesting question and something which I think everybody has had an experience of. Okay, let's see the rose. We just visualize red rose because that's what people like to press. If you press a red rose, then in a couple of days it turns maroon, gets dried, and then turns brownish, and then the petals start falling off. But if you take a feather, maybe a beautiful peacock feather, and you keep that in your notebook, nothing happens to it. Now, if both are having, one is from animal, the other is from plant, why this difference? That's definitely, I'm very happy that somebody has asked this question, because the answer is that the coloration in animals and coloration in plants are because of totally different phenomena. In plants, okay, if you take the rose petals and take some water and mix them into that, you will get a red colored solution. Even if you remove the plant material, you will get a red colored solution. But on the other hand, if you take the peacock feathers and try smashing them up, nothing will happen. You will not get the color. The reason is that except a brownish pigment called melanin, animals don't have pigments. There are some very unique proteinaceous combinations which we call chromophores, which may be present, say, like in the eye color and all. But basically in animals, we don't have colors, but imagine such a colorful world of animals. The fishes, the birds, they have beautiful colors. What are these colors from? In plants, they are pigments. They may be water-soluble pigments like red and blue pigments, which we call as anthocyanins, and there may be water-insoluble pigments, which may be chlorophyll and maybe carotenoids, as some of you might have read about them, which are present inside the chloroplast. Similarly, chromoplast is their color, but they are always present in the living cells. While the coloration in animals is not in living cells. All these feathers, there is nothing living, there are no living cells in that. That is why when it gets not very, a part of it is not functioning well, the bird drops the feather. That is why you find all those feathers. It is not that somebody killed a peacock and you see those on the road or in the gardens, but actually the bird just removes it, because it is just like our nails, just like that. So it is something, but what about the color? If you just turn back and see the peacock feather, you will find the colors are not there. And the peacock is dancing also. One side is so colorful, the other side is not colorful. Now that means this is not something which is through and through. Okay? So another experience you might have had is running after a butterfly, catching a butterfly, and then you don't want to kill that butterfly, so you just let it go. But what happens to your fingers? I'm sure most of you have felt that there is, and you just rub them, there is something granular. That is because there are small prism-like structures present in the animals, and they reflect light differently. And this is what is responsible for the colors. Talking of carnelian, गिरगिट रंग बदलता है, वो गिरगिट रंग कैसे बदलता है? उसकी स्किन में ऐसे ही स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं जिनका वो एंगल बदल सकता है। एंगल बदलने से वो अपने आप को कैमोफ्लेज कर देता है और सराउंडिंग्स में मिक्स हो सकता है। So same crystal-like things can reflect differently. Just like if you You know what a prism is? It is a glass piece which you might have seen in the physics lab. It is triangular on two sides and three sides are rectangular. So from the rectangular side, if you put in light, then the whole spectrum comes out. Correct. So that is the phenomena birds use. Nature is amazing. Nature is something which is, and you just go and read more and more about these things. And the more you learn, you do a Google search for another word and look for an e-book on these things, and you will find so much more. You just get lost into these things. So enjoy these beauties of nature.
That is true, ma'am. I have one last question. I know we want to know more and more, but yes, I will just ask the last question for this session. So it says the corn cobs has seeds in rows. So, and we have a specific number of rows. How does it happen?
That's an interesting question. I'm sure everybody has eaten Gita or corn cob. The rainy season, it's available on the roads that they are still. Have you ever counted how many rows? Okay, so you can write in the chat box down below.
Yes.
How many? And then I'm going to check out how many of you really knew before I told you. Okay. So if you just, one thing is why they are rows.
Yes.
And the second is that these rows are always in even number. And the commercial cob has either 14 or 16 or 18. As a rule, how does this happen? Because these are made from florets. In case of, this is a female inflorescence, female cluster of flowers. The male flowers in case of maize or bhutta are on top and they are loose like grass-like, absolutely. But the cob that we actually get the grains from, this is in pairs. The florets are in pairs, and that is why the number of rows will always be even. And they are arranged in straight lines, like you might have seen for wheat also. Wheat, you might have seen there are 3 rows. So the wheat is now will be available around Holi. People take it around the fire, and hence the wheat inflorescence is also available around that time. So even if you don't have it growing anywhere around, you just see that they are also in rows. So similarly, we are in rows. Another interesting thing I would like to add to this about maize is that if you go to buy from the market, you find there is a soft hairy thing on it.
Yes, yes, it is.
Sometimes it is transparent, greenish, sometimes it is brown. This greenish or brownish thing, which we call as Buriya Diwar, this is actually the styles. You know, the female flower has a female part which is called pistil. It has stigma, style, ovary, 3 parts. Okay? Style is the long thing, and this is a long thing which is a fusion product of style and stigma. So when this is outside that whole covering, so the pollen come and fall on that. It is a wind pollinated system. The pollen come and fall on that, and then the pollen tubes go and make the grain inside. So that means that you can count those and you will know there will be that many grains inside. So if it is very fluffy on top, lots of them, that means your bhutta has a lot of grains. You don't have to open and see. So from that you can make out. And if they are brown, that means they are mature. If they are tender green, that means the bhutta will be quite tender to eat. So if you want it for making maybe sweet corn soup, then you need it mature. And if you're just going to roast it and eat, you want it tender. So beautiful science all around us, and I hope some of you have taken some kind of ideas from this. So first thing is start observing, then asking the right questions. Science is all about asking and answering questions. The more you do, the more enthusiastic you will get into it. And the more you enjoy and get enthused by this, the more scientific mind you will have. You don't have to have a science degree to study science. Science is not a subject. Science is a way of life. Science is something right around us. So let's understand the phenomena around us and give them a scientific perspective and understand from simple things you can learn lessons from things around us.
That is true, ma'am. I think I today would say that I have learned a lot. And in this small session, I am a more informed person now. And I would request everybody, as you very rightly said, unless we are curious, unless we ask about how, why, what, we are not going to be a more informed person. For tomorrow, to be better knowledgeable citizens, all of us, we need to ask how, what, why of everything. And science is something, what better than science, I would say. And curiosity should be there in every person. Unless we are curious, we are not going to be a better human being. We are not growing if we are not curious to know how things will be. This session, ma'am, I am much informed and I think we should have more sessions like this to understand more about science and actually make it enjoyable for all of us. I would like to thank you so much for being part of this program, for being part of the Union World Book Fair 29th edition 2021 virtual which we are having this time, and for having connected with all of us here and told us more about how science is enjoyable and we need to know more about it. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for inviting me and all the best for this book fair, and I hope we'll have a lot of feedback, and all of you who have been listening to me today, you are welcome to interact, and you can leave your email IDs in the
Comment section.
Comment section,
Yes.
so that we can all be in touch.
Yes. Thanks, sir.